the word.
In the classical world, clapping in music has always been something of an embarrassment. And I'm not just talking about the endless debates that take place over whether or not to clap between movements. Until recently at least, the only place in the classical world that really welcomed clapping was on New Year's Day in Vienna, the Radetksy March. Clapping in popular music has had more of a checkered history. Shirley Ellis's The Clapping Song of 1965 and the use of clapping in Motown and disco meant that clapping maintained a healthy popularity throughout the 60s and 70s. Then it fell out of fashion. But according to Cuepoint Music, there's been a huge surge in the use of clapping in songs in the last 10 years, with a 31% increase over the last 7 years. Clapping in popular music serves two pretty straightforward functions. One is its use as a simple form of percussion, often replacing the snare drum. But secondly, there's always something about clapping that, as long as you're willing to overlook a certain degree of cheesiness, can add a real sense of joy and happiness. This feel-good factor means that clapping can be used to allow people to bond, to connect with each other, or even to connect with higher powers, as happens in gospel music and Hindu Bhajan singing. There are some traditions, however, where clapping is integral to the musical tradition, and the most famous of these, of course, is Flamenco. Palmas is the practice of clapping in flamenco music, and being a palmero or a palmista is actually a profession. Different flamenco forms are called palos, and they usually have their own individual rhythmic cycle. And the palmeros help to create the complex patterns of the palos, like the bulería, by emphasizing different beats within the cycle. A soft clapping style, or palmas sordas, is used to allow an instrumental passage to come through. And the much louder palmas fuertes is used to bring the rhythm into the foreground. The number of claps sounding per minute now starts to go way up, because of a technique known in flamenco as contratiempo, where two musicians perform interlocking claps to create a much faster overall clapping tempo. A very similar but less well-known clapping effect can be seen in Fidjeri music, a tradition of vocal music practiced by pearl divers in eastern Arabia's coastal Gulf states, especially Bahrain and Kuwait. The speeds are now hitting an impressive 480 claps per minute. As classical music has gradually opened itself up to these kind of world music influences, the use of clapping has gradually increased in contemporary classical music. The piece you heard in the intro to this video is my own attempt, part of a larger piece called Cut the Rug, which I wrote for Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble. But by far the most famous piece is Steve Reich's 1972 piece Clapping Music, which was apparently inspired by a trip to a Brussels flamenco bar while on tour with his band. You can see the flamenco influence in the way that two performers create complex interlocking patterns. But Reich was actually far more influenced by the bell patterns of Ghanaian music that he learned about in A.M. Jones's Studies in African Music. It's also one of the clearest examples of Reich's signature technique of phasing, where two versions of the same idea gradually shift out of sync with one another. So it seems like the Fidjeri music is the winner of our search for the fastest musical clapping. But then, a few days ago, my son turned up with this new trick he'd learnt from someone at band practice. A quick Google search showed that this is a bit of a... with a whole slew of people trying to clap faster and faster, and the current world record seems to be over 1,000 claps per minute. This got me thinking, maybe I could write a piece to claim the prize for the fastest clapping in music. My son's fastest claps turn in at around 760 claps per minute, half as fast again as the Fidjeri example. So, without further ado, here it is.
tu es en train de